All right, so today we're going deep on undercover sting operations. And we've got some really interesting stuff to unpack here from this blog post. It features Lou Loia. He's a former federal agent and the host of the show Operation Undercover.
Yeah, his stories really give you a sense of what it's like to be in the thick of it, you know,
Yeah.
beyond the sort of Hollywood version of undercover work.
Right. It's not all car chases and shootouts.
Exactly. There's so much more strategy and planning involved, and a whole lot of risk, too.
Yeah. And speaking of risk, one thing that really stood out to me from this blog post was Lou Loia's point that these operations are happening all over the place. It's not just the stereotypical, like, dark alleys and bad neighborhoods you might imagine.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, think about it. Drug rings, arms dealers, human trafficking, these things aren't always confined to certain areas. They can be happening right under our noses.
So it's not just about blending into a rough crowd.
Nope. Sometimes it's about blending into everyday life,
Mm,
infiltrating communities that might seem totally normal on the surface.
that must be so challenging.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why the selection of undercover agents is crucial. Lou Loia talks about how important it is to choose agents who are totally unfamiliar with the community where the operation is taking place.
Because if someone's got ties to the area, they're much more likely to be recognized, right?
Exactly. It's all about minimizing the risk of exposure. I mean, one slip up and the whole operation could be blown.
It's wild to think about the kind of pressure these agents must be under.
Oh, for sure. It's a constant balancing act. You need to gather enough evidence to build a case, but you also have to prioritize your own safety. And that constant fear of being found out, it can really take a toll on you mentally and emotionally.
It sounds incredibly intense. And there's one case that Lou Loya talks about that really drives this point home. The case of the Bonnie and Clyde of Pueblo.
Oh, wow. I'd forgotten about that one.
This couple was running a meth operation. And get this, it was right next to a school.
Oh, man, that's scary. That adds a whole other layer of complexity to the operation.
Yeah, right. It's not just about taking down the criminals. It's also about protecting the innocent people who might be caught in the crossfire.
Absolutely. And in that case, there were actually a few close calls. At one point, their communication devices malfunctioned
Oh, wow.
during a really crucial moment in the operation.
So it's like something straight out of a movie
Yeah, totally.
where everything could fall apart in an instant.
Exactly. But they managed to pull it off. And thankfully, no one was hurt.
It's amazing how these agents can stay so calm and focused under that kind of pressure.
Well, they're highly trained for these situations. But it still takes incredible courage and dedication.
And in this particular case, I think it's clear that the agents were personally invested in taking down this operation,
Yeah.
because it was happening right in their backyard and putting kids at risk.
I think that's a really important point. It's easy to forget that these agents aren't just robots. They're people with families and communities they care about.
Right. And they're putting their lives on the line to protect those communities.
Exactly. And that's something we should all be grateful for.
Absolutely. It's really making me think about the level of dedication and skill it takes to be an undercover agent. It's not just about being brave, right?
No, not at all.
You've got to be incredibly strategic and meticulous.
Right. It's like Loya says, most of the work in these operations actually happens behind the scenes.
So what does that look like? Like, what are the agents actually doing during that prep phase?
Well, think of it as a giant puzzle. They're gathering intel from all sorts of sources. Sometimes they're managing informants, which can be pretty risky in itself. And they're often conducting controlled buys to establish a pattern of criminal activity.
So it's not just about catching someone red-handed.
Nope, it's about building a rock-solid case, one that will hold up in court.
That makes sense. It sounds incredibly detailed and complex.
Oh, it definitely is. These operations can take weeks, months, even years to come together.
Wow. So we've talked about the risks, the planning, but what about the impact?
That's a great question.
Like, what's the bigger picture goal of these undercover sting operations?
Well, it's about more than just making arrests. It's about disrupting entire criminal networks, preventing future harm, and ultimately making communities safer.
So they're really working to protect us, even if we don't always see it.
Exactly. They're kind of like unsung heroes in a way.
And Lou Loya talks about how it takes a certain kind of mental toughness to do this work.
Oh yeah, he uses the word compartmentalization. It's about being able to separate your undercover persona from your real self.
That sounds incredibly challenging.
Oh, it is. You can really mess with your head if you're not careful.
I can imagine.
It's a constant battle to maintain your own sense of identity and morality when you're constantly pretending to be someone else.
So how do these agents cope with that?
Well, they undergo extensive training. And they have access to psychological support.
That makes sense. Because it's not just about physical danger, right?
Right. The emotional and psychological toll can be just as significant.
It's a whole other dimension to undercover work that we don't often see. Wow, it's amazing how much we've uncovered about this world just from this one blog post.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff.
Like, we went from the excitement of the sting operation itself to the meticulous planning that goes into it.
Right. All the behind-the-scenes work.
And now we're talking about these really deep ethical questions.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, isn't it?
Totally. And with each layer, we get a better understanding of the incredible challenges that these undercover agents face.
And the weight they carry.
You know, I keep thinking back to what Lou Loia said about mental toughness and the need for compartmentalization.
Yeah, that really stuck with me too.
How do these agents process all of that, the deception, the danger, and still manage to hold on to their own sense of morality?
That's the question, isn't it?
It's got to be a difficult transition going back to a normal life after experiencing all of that.
Absolutely.
I wonder if there's enough support in place for these agents, to help them deal with the emotional and psychological impact of this work.
I think that's something law enforcement agencies are becoming more aware of.
Because in the end, these are real people.
Right. They're not robots or characters in a movie.
They have families and lives and feelings just like us.
And their work has a ripple effect. It goes far beyond the immediate cases they're working on.
So we've got to make sure they're getting the support they need.
Definitely.
It's been really eye-opening to explore this world of undercover operations.
Me too.
It's clearly so much more than just action and adventure.
Right. It's about strategy, psychology, ethics.
And recognizing the human cost involved.
Exactly. These agents are putting their lives on the line to protect us from threats that we might not even be aware of.
And I think we owe them a huge debt of gratitude for that.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, for anyone who wants to learn more about Lou Loia and his experiences, I highly recommend checking out his show, Operation Undercover.
It's a great way to get a glimpse into this hidden world.
And I think it will give you a lot to think about.
As a final thought, I'd like to leave you with this. If you could ask Lou Loia one question about his time as an undercover agent, what would it be?
That's a great question. It really makes you realize how much more there is to explore about this fascinating and often misunderstood world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.